Hello everybody, welcome back to another Warcry Age of Sigmar video where you might notice I've got my headphones on today. That's because I am joined by a guest. I've got Rob here with me, also known as Girth Demon over on the Discord, if that's something that you frequent. If you want to say hi, Rob.
Hey guys, what's going on?
Hello, hello. And yeah, the reason why he's with me today is that we're going to be looking at a list that he built. He's been doing fairly well with it recently. There's been some changes, but it's something that really kind of jumped out to me. It's a bit different from your normal fare of destruction soup when you've got a bunch of big guys supported by Brugans, give them extra attacks. And it's really one of the really good examples of what I would call a combo list in Warcry, where when you're doing your list building, you look at a specific model and you say, right, this is the model I'm going to build around. Let me put all of these pieces in place that work really well with that model in order to maximize its efficiency on the battlefield. And that's why I thought it might be something interesting to look at today, and that's why Rob's with me. But before we get into that, if you do want to see more list focuses, please don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you want to give me a little bit more support, I'm just reminding people that I do have YouTube membership going on. You can see the buttons at the bottom of the screen. We've got our Patreon if you want to see some behind the scenes stuff, what I'm working on soon. If you want to have a little bit of say into what kind of topics I look into, that's something that might be interesting for you. Or alternatively, if none of that isn't your thing, we can go into Streamlabs and you can support me that way. Right, so here is the list. Big Daddy Hrothgorn, Mantrapper, and the Destruction Kruleboyz. Rob, you're really the architect of this list, so I'm going to let you talk through it, I think. And then what we're going to do is we're going to look at all of the different options that you've chosen. We're going to see why it works. We're going to see how it works. So Rob, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Awesome. This was the culmination of me obsessively list building for Nova over in Washington, D.C. in the U.S., and it was pretty much designed around what can I do to get the most out of something. I wanted to play Destruction Soup. I didn't want to just run Brugit, Gutlord, big guy, send him in, her. I wanted something that had some options both at close and long range, because without projection, it feels very limited against warbands like KO. So going through the list, and I am way too much of a hipster myself to sit there and get a big net list of what's going to work, even though that's very effective if you want to go to a tournament to win, if that's your intention. But obviously, you and I are like-minded, and we prefer to kind of hash it out ourselves.
Yeah.
And I looked at Hrothgorn Mantrapper having the 6 attack, 4/8 on 2 dice. Typically, I avoid 2 dice models. RIP Croxagors or anything that's awesome that has those 2 dice. However, being able to shoot, get a triple to shoot again, and then I'm like, how do I get another shot? Oh, I could get a shot if I kill something on a double. Cool. How do I get another shot? And because at that point, weight of dice, if I'm rolling on 3s on almost everything, it's almost going to come up in my favor to be a little bit ahead of it. And I looked at the Gut Rippers and I looked at the Kruleboyz in general, and I saw the fact that the reaction did not say melee attack, it said ranged attack. Well, all I had to do was sit there and say, perfect. I'm going to put them 3 away or 3 above directly. So if anybody enters my zone, I'm going to play Kill Team Overwatch Edition. And I'm just going to start blasting everything that comes near me.
Sure. And just for clarification for everyone at home, the reaction that we're talking about is the Kruleboyz reaction. We're going to go through that in a little bit, but effectively it gives zones of control on the battlefield, where if any enemy fighter goes into those areas, it allows nearby fighters to get extra attack actions. And that's how we are just getting more and more attacks off of Hrothgorn through the Kruleboyz.
Pretty much. I think that's the key right there. So having the idea of also how can I give somebody a headache while playing my game and make them answer my questions, as opposed to me having to answer their questions, was something that greatly benefited me.
I've played against this list. I use Hunters of Huanchi, where normally you would expect them to be able to just dance around the board and kind of keep out the way. But I think for 90% of this list, that is the case. But just having Hrothgorn there and those zones of control really helps when you're playing against like maneuverability warbands. But yeah, from my perspective, I can definitely get behind the idea that you have to think way too much when playing against this. When playing against this list, in terms of where you're putting your guys, where your guys end, where they want to start and finish their movements, all that kind of thing. It adds a very interesting tactical layer to the game that you normally don't see.
And even in our list too, I don't even think Hrothgorn shined that much, which you
No.
guys can watch on your YouTube channel. I know
Mm-hmm.
that video is still up there.
Yep.
And he didn't even shine that much, but he did enough of like a threat area of effect to say, hey, even though you have 14 wound guys, if I crit hit, you're done.
Sure.
So just to even pose that threat lets me do what I want to project how I want with slower moving dudes.
Mm.
And it's what makes it good. And I think it's a lot of fun too in Warcry when I'm able to interact with you on your turn instead of just I go, you go, I go, you go. Okay, you can go, but I have stuff to do if you do X, Y, or Z. Just to reiterate what you said, the tactical acumen of just so many more decisions to make now really makes the game more flavorful. Sweaty for sure. I wouldn't bring this to like a local game store and be like, "Hey guys, let's have some fun. Nobody's gonna like you."
You want your 1-box iron golems? Let's let's go.
Hey, check this out! Hitting on threes from 9 inches away. All right, later.
Yeah, of course. I think it is very much, let's say, a top tier tournament deck. I would put it in that kind of range in terms of, I say deck. What am I talking about? We were playing card games now. In terms of the different warbands that you expect it to face and the different warbands that it does well against, and it was built to beat. Almost. That's the kind of level that it's sitting on, I think.
Oh, for sure. And if you don't practice it, it's going to give yourself a headache too. Hrothgorn's not the easiest to play. If you close the gap on him, he's really not. He's just kind of tickling you lightly. It's a lot of positioning. It's a lot of knowing where you're at on your missions. It's just not the fun Saturday, let's throw it on the table list. But it is definitely awesome if it's something you want to practice and bring to a tournament and really put some work into. It's very rewarding.
Most definitely, most definitely. Right, so shall we look at the fighters themselves? So what we're going to do, we're going to look at basically all the choices that Rob made, go through them, say why they're there. So to start off, Hrothgorn Mantrapper, 300 points of 40 wound ballista firing from across the battlefield wall.
Yeah, dude, it's unbelievable that they James Workshop left him alone, and I think it's super fun though. 2 dice makes it fair, and it's gonna smack. But the fact that I can get this much mileage out of for so little asking to build around it is just really excellent. So you have the here you go boss, which is the triple by that handsome young man in the middle, Quiv. On a triple, if he's within 2, I just give him an extra ranged attack, so I can move, set up, shoot. Next turn, he moves something in, run up with Quiv, put the triple on him, get an extra shot.
Yep.
And that usually does it. The double, which I mentioned before, might makes right. If Hrothgorn gets a kill, he can make another move or another shot, which lets him advance the board and control the area, or I can just get another shot for potential another kill. Those two are self-contained combo in it that they beautifully work together in their own pack that they come out with for the Underworlds one. I think if you're running Hrothgorn in any list, you're going to look at it as 345 because you're always going to be running Quiv with him.
Yes. No, I agree very much so. Something that you were talking about a little bit before. So I've been testing a little bit with Hrothgorn Mantrapper recently. I've been messing around with the Gorges. Anyone who's interested, there's a lovely, handsome Gorger that I've been working on. I've been messing around with them, and I've been messing around with Hrothgorn. And you were saying that half of the game almost is positioning with him, getting him into the right places so that he can use those ranged attacks. And because his melee profile isn't great, like I actually think he's almost fairly costed for 300 points, because it is a lot of points you're investing into a model. When you consider the alternatives that you can bring that are far more straightforward, you could bring like a Gut Lord, for example, or you could bring a Mega Boss. But yeah, on his maneuverability, I found if your opponent knows what you're going to be doing with him, they'll try and shut him down by getting him into combat and wasting his actions that way, trying to tie him up. So I found what I was doing a lot of was, okay, my opponent has charged me, they've attacked me, they can't get through the 40 wounds. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to disengage shoot. And I was doing a lot of that. And I think unlike a lot of those other big models, let's say Gutlord, Tyrant, whatever, where if they're charged, they're basically stuck there for the turn, killing whatever it is they charge. Hrothgorn's ranged abilities combined with Quiv allows him to do all that stuff where, okay, well, yeah, I'm just going to disengage, shoot that chaff model, kill that chaff model, then Quiver's going to give me my extra shot. So he's much harder to tie down, I think, than a lot of people give him credit for. But that really comes down to practicing with him and like figuring out the play patterns, how to get out of problems that your opponents might be putting into you.
Yeah, that was awesomely put. And I think a lot of the people take the bait of like, oh, we got to flog him down. At that point, I'm paying 300 points for 40 wounds
Yeah.
for you to sit there and waste 2, 3, 4 guys on over 2, 3 turns.
For
I
sure.
think out of all the games I've played him, I've maybe lost him twice.
Mhm.
And one was to a Civ Rights list that a Slake Slash, a Lord of Pain, and a Glissette were teaming up on him. And at that point, it's just inevitable. And the player positioned perfectly. Shout out to Diomeden in Discord. But at that time, I had everything else move into a position to take advantage of it. And like you're saying, as long as I'm not base to base and I disengage, I can make a shot on that model. Even if you are base to base, I could disengage and just pick a different target. Then you're playing the move, attack, move, attack.
Yeah.
I'm playing disengage, shoot, disengage, shoot. And I could do that and dance on a point I control all day while getting shots. Even then, against skeletons, I had a game the first league against Soulblight, and he walked into the trap, which you see at the bottom of the screen, cunning trap. A fighter can make this reaction after enemy fighter finishes a move action visible to this fighter and within 3 inches of this fighter. Pick another friendly fighter within 3 of this fighter. That fighter makes a bonus attack, keyword bonus attack, not bonus melee attack. Action that must target the enemy fighter and make the move action. So pretty much I would either position him up or directly 3 behind, as long as somebody didn't get into the donut of to be engaged within 1 inch of the Rippa or within 3 of Mantrapper. We were golden to get free shots. I think I killed 5 fighters that game with Hrothgorn.
He's not absolutely garbage in melee. He's just not that good.
Right, he's a typical ogre.
Yeah, it's well within his powers to knock down things like skeletons or, like 8 to 10 wound chaff models that might be toughness 3 or toughness 4. He can do that, and that's not a big deal, I think. So, I don't know, if you're trying to bog him down with chaff models, you really need to surround him so that he can't physically move anywhere to disengage. Otherwise, he'll just run away and shoot.
Yeah, the best part to counter that is to just get into that donut, that 2 inches where I can't swing at you and I can't shoot you, and I'm just stuck in limbo trying to move out of your area and then actually wasting actions. So I think that's like how you handle them. It's not a surprise or secret at this point, but it's easier said than done.
We've talked about the Gut Ripper boss with Wicked Stick simply because of Cunning Trap, and there's a bunch of Kruleboyz in the list. That's where your sources of Cunning Trap is actually coming from. But what we also have, we have a bunch of other guys. So we've got your Brute Boss with Boss Chopper, 190 points of you messing, I'm gonna punch you, you're gonna die from it. Essentially, that's what he's there for.
Yeah, he's there to say, hey, I have 9 models in my list, and you might have 12, but it doesn't matter on one of those points that he's going to pick. So as scary and big as he is, sometimes all he does is just walk, get in the position, steal a point.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. It's really simple, but it's really good. Having charge, having that anvil, as well as a hammer baked into one with excellent utility is pretty much what says, hey, you want to focus Hrothgorn, now you got this guy charging down everything in your back line. And that's cool. That's completely fine if you want to just spend 3-4 models into 40 wounds. But I think the silent stars of the show are also the gobblers, right? Bushwhack and Shank we see here. Shank being 55 points from the Underworld's warband, Manic's Cunning Crew, I think it is.
Yep, that's the one.
Has a double, sneaky snares, 2 inches of him, roll of 2+, so it's one of the better nets. The enemy is netted, and that's just obnoxious. And you would not believe how many people off the rip target this fighter. Like sometimes I have no intention to send him in the net anything because he's gonna die. People just gun for him, and I'm like, cool. You're gonna walk in. You're probably gonna take a cunning trap with the brute boss next to him, and if you fail to kill 6 wounds on 4 toughness, then you're just in a horrible spot.
That toughness 4, God, it's so annoying. Like, you see him, you see 6 wounds, and it's like, oh, I can kill this guy. But then he's got toughness 4, so it's only a winning of 4s or 5s. So he's almost harder to kill than Bushwhacker with the 2 extra wounds, just because of that toughness 4.
He's super obnoxious about it, and
Yeah.
just the extra source of the trap is just excellent for him with the bosses that he runs around with. The little dude in the middle, Bushwhacker, 40 points. It's just flat out better than a regular Noblar. Has Lay Mantrap, and it is one of the most fun abilities in the game to play with. You're dropping a token on the ground that you can run over, but your opponents can't. It's within 3 of him, but more than 1 away from all enemy fighters. Best thing to do is you throw it into deployment, just run him in on some sort of crazy mission, and he throws it, and then he runs out. 2d6, the average you're going to roll is 7 most of the time. You know, if I
Yes.
say that, I'm going to get snake eyes probably later tonight on it. That's fine.
It doesn't matter. It's just two damage for a double on
For
a
a
40 point, on a
double.
40-point model it's fine.
Right, and even when you and I were testing it out and you throw it, it closes off a choke point. It
It
just
does.
says, like, you want to come here, you're gambling. Because
Mm.
most people in their head are going to be like, oh man, if I take 12 damage on this, that's going to be bad. And honestly, it will be. I threw at Nova, I threw him this little trap in a deployment against the Thunder Skinks.
Mhm.
A Annihilator Prime dared to move past it, be the first one to move past it, and took 12 damage off 2
Sure.
sixes. So dropping from 20 to 8, not a great time for him. It's awesome seeing what one small little piece brings something that yet again engages on your opponent's, like throwing dice on your opponent's turn is like the best thing in the world.
You get a lot of these traps in Kill Team, right? And you've got guys with bombs and guys with grenades and whatever that go up through their trap and then they run away. But the thing about Bushwhacker is that on his man trap, unlike every other ability in the game that requires you to either start or end a move, his is just move within 1 inch. So even the Kruleboyz reaction requires you to end a move within 3 inches. His is just move. And that's the thing that I think makes it super strong, because it means your opponent can't just go, okay, well, I need to finish a move here or I need to start a move here so I can kind of get around that control zone. Whereas if you go turn 1, okay, move, throw your man trap and throw it in front of your opponent's leader, what are they going to do? Are they going to sit there for the entire game and not move to blow up this man trap? Are they going to move another guy just to eat the wounds for him? I think it's not something that you see at all in Warcry. I think from a tactical perspective, if I was bringing Hrothgorn, of course you're going to bring Quiv, but I'd always bring Bushwhacker as well, just for the shenanigans that he can do.
Yeah, you're 1,000% right. I mean, like Quiv is the mandatory, but Bushwhacker almost always 9 out of 10 times comes.
Yeah.
I mean, like you
Oh no,
glance at them wrong and they just drop.
sure.
But the fact that it's everything is not just a chaff that just moves to sit on a point and maybe throw some dice. It's everything has a purpose, and I think that's a lot more fun and fulfilling when you're playing. Everything has a role.
It's a bit like playing normal Destruction Soup, right? Where you have 1,000 different abilities that you can use in any situation. So you have your guy, and each guy can do a thing. But in this case, you've got all of your guys, and each guy has a specific thing that they can do and that they should be doing. And then your job is to figure out in what order you want those things to happen to kind of maximize what's going on during your game.
Yeah, that's perfectly put. And
Mhm.
it's part of the beautiful part about building with destruction. And I
Yes.
think it has made me so much more limited at building for other grand alliances because
Yeah.
I have this ability to be like, oh, let's take some of this, let's take some of this.
Yeah, they have
This here.
such good heroes and allies that they can bring.
It's
Like,
crazy. You think
for
the
anything.
Grand Alliance dedicated towards murdering and rampaging things would just be straightforward, yet it's so layered and nuanced. And the
Yes.
guys I build with, Peter, who's the sole person responsible for keeping gits at like 60%. Him and I come from he taught me a lot how to build when I was working on Nova,
Mm.
and we come from this place of having a silver bullet for every situation, but it's got to be functionally strong on its own. And that's where when you look at these 3 units, you're like, okay, so if Hrothgorn's not working, or I'm rolling cold on him, or he's not doing his job, my brute boss is able to go in, get a guaranteed steal a point off anything. He can also just punch up his weight on so many things. It's really good. It's just a really fun, good time for that.
Yeah. Yeah, most definitely. Now we're going to talk a bit more about the Kruleboyz reaction, and we're going to talk about area control. And this is what we were talking a little bit about before, where if you have one of your Kruleboyz, you can sit Hrothgorn behind those Kruleboyz 3 inches away, and as long as anything moves into that area, Hrothgorn will be able to get his free shot off. So the idea here is I've got a little scenario where we have the Kruleboy leader in the middle, a Kruleboy in front of him. He's got a piece of treasure, maybe he's captured one. He's retreating back to kind of get some safety in numbers. And if you charge anywhere within that red circle, Hrothgorn effectively will get to have his free shot. Now, the only situations where he wouldn't be able to do that is if you engage one of the Kruleboyz directly, but you're going to have overlapping areas of control here. So with clever movement and figuring out how far your opponent can move and what they can do and how they can do it, you'll be able to maximize on Hrothgorn's shots that he gets.
It's definitely very setup heavy. Sometimes the terrain can affect what you're doing too. There's a lot of things to take into account. But where you see that ring around the center guy, Hrothgorn sitting all the way at the back edge, just toe touching that circle 3. Somebody moves in, doesn't engage, just gets blasted. And I can't tell you how many times people just don't even want to deal with it or
Yeah,
don't want to know how to deal with it. The people who do figure it out do move a little bit better. I can say area control, as strong as it is, if you're focusing too much on the combo, when you're on objective missions, you will lose out early on early objective missions to say, I'm
sure.
setting up and you can come at me. And some people will be like, I don't care. I'm going to the objective. I'm going to sit here. Good luck. And all of a sudden you're behind points and behind tempo, which is what he doesn't want to have to do because then you have to break this self-made castle to go and
Yes.
hunt things down.
It's far more difficult to shift people off of objectives than it is to protect them. Just simply because you need to always have more fighters than your opponent in order to get that objective off of them. So yeah, definitely you want to really check out what's going on in terms of the mission and how best to use your fighters both to almost attack and defend in this case. Taking this into a very extreme example, just to give an idea as to how wide an area on the board using the Kruleboyz reaction can actually cover. This is just 3 Kruleboyz. Now this also takes up almost, let's say, a third of your total board space in terms of the 3 6-inch diameter circles that we're playing around with. So yeah, it's massive. And the idea is if anyone goes within range of any of this area, they can potentially get shot just because of how the overlapping areas of control are working.
Yeah, it's an extreme situation, but it's also nice to know that you have this availability towards it.
Yeah.
This is what I like to call the I'm setting up a game to not play with you. So I
Yes.
could say you can't play, and it just makes you look like a huge jerk, but it's
Yeah.
awesome at the
Yeah.
same sense. And the cool part is you have the Rippa set up, but it could also be the Shank. It could also be the Rippa boss. There's so much flexibility within KBZ as to who's giving you that reaction and deciding ultimately who do you want to forfeit a turn to give an extra shot. And this is awesome because you have 3 people saying, I'm willing to give up my actions to let this guy blast anything that comes in the way. And it's fantastic.
Let's say you're playing on an objective mission, for example. You could do something like this with just the 2 Gut Rippers, one on each objective, and Hrothgorn in the middle of those two. And there are some deployments and some missions where you can stretch all of that out and you can capture your 2 objectives and essentially have 2 objectives almost safe from attack just because of the threat of Hrothgorn going, okay, well, I'm going to shoot you now. Your opponent's in this situation where, okay, what do we do? Do we try and neutralize Hrothgorn's shooting, in which case we're not going for the objectives because we have to go deal with him and he's not sitting on one? Or do we go for the objectives, go fight Gut Rippers? Gut Rippers aren't terrible. They have 15 wounds and toughness 4. So they're not going to die in one round of combat or in some cases 2 rounds of combat against normal fighters. So yeah, I think it gives a very interesting decision points for your opponent when they're trying to attack into it.
Rippas are a great body. I think that was the biggest deciding factor to go with them, just to park their body somewhere and say,
Yes.
I'm going to counter and I'm going to offer a free reaction to somebody else. It just kind of served to fuel the engine of everything that existed here. With that being said, they do hit a little wet noodly if you have
Oh,
nothing else
sure,
to do.
sure. But they're reaction batteries, right? Their job is to not die for a couple of turns.
Yeah. Or they die for their dad, and that's about it. And that's
Yeah,
the only thing they can
exactly.
do.
Yeah, I mean, there's still a fairly large warband. What was it? 9 models, I think you said?
9 models I had
Nine
this
models,
year.
yeah. So nine isn't small by any means. So you still have the guys in there. You still have the extra damage off of the brute boss if you need to use it. I think the list, because of all of that, is just flexible enough that it can handle a wide variety of opponents, and especially against lists like Kharadron Overlords, for example, you mentioned them already, that they like to get onto objectives, sit there and shoot you from those objectives. When you can suddenly do things back to them, they start to fall over real quick.
Yeah, classic school bullies here. They just want to sit there and say, "Look at our big guns." But I think it was like round 2 of Nova, I just literally killed a Master on turn 1 from 2 different shots. Rolled a little hot. That's
Yeah,
part of
sure.
the game. And then I just walked this big lad up a gur tree and just walked him across a bridge, just taking turns, killing everything. What you said with flexibility for anybody who is looking to build it, the Nova list didn't run the brute boss and did not run the gut ripper boss. It ran an Ardboy boss and a killer boss. So if you're looking for more killing missions, you can certainly do those two because they lower on the toughness, but way more on the output for damage.
Yeah.
And we're looking at objective missions. Brute boss, gut ripper boss are probably going to be your best bets for anybody looking to assemble this. Also,
Sure.
I got a challenge for everybody. If you want to get in Ethan's comments over here, maximum I had was 5 shots in 1 round from Hrothgorn from one turn, right? So turn 1 or turn 2. I want you guys to figure out how I got 5 shots out of that. It was Christmas Wonderland for me. But I got 5 shots out of this dude. It was the most.
Sure it was.
That's 10 from my boy.
Doing 4-8 damage, winding on 3s.
Right. How did I get this done? Is your puzzle?
Well, hopefully people can figure it out. Right, so this is how it is now. This is what you've been like. This list is old by about a week and a bit. I think you've been testing this list out a bit. I played against this with the new Gorges, which was pretty interesting. But this is the kind of direction that you're going in using the new the new Kruleboyz that have recently come out. So yeah, if you want to go through this, what you're thinking now in terms of how you're going to use Hrothgorn in the context of this list and what you're going to do.
So the show becomes less about Hrothgorn getting 4 or 5 attacks.
Yeah,
it becomes more about him serving as that beacon of like that distraction carnifex, I think would be the term.
Having his range projection there, giving your opponent a big target to say, look, if you leave me alone, I'm going to basically be able to do what I want.
Right. I'm gonna just poop on you guys all day, every day, and then with a triple and a double, if I get a kill, I'm getting X amount more shots.
Yes.
We're projecting more. We don't get the Overwatch shot or the free action economy that we do with the Kruleboyz. However, the monster killers have a 6-inch range. We roll a die. You're either being taxed 2 life, or on a 5-up, you could get netted or take 4 damage. You make it all the way in. My Clutcher Garrot reacts. Take 4 damage. You're good there. Or, you're move 3. You barely make it in. You get netted. That's not good for you. Again, we're playing with range and reaction control in this sense. People who play Skaven tend to kind of favor this type of play as well, where it's, even though I hate Skaven, don't come at me on that one for anybody. You know who you are. You're all dirty people. And pretty much the Beast Knob is like all those other leaders on steroids.
He's crazy. He's absolutely mad.
So insane. The Bone Hacker the other day, and this is post-testing. I've done 12 games last week because I may have a problem with this.
Wow.
Yeah, I did a lot of KMK testing last week. The Bone Hacker, I did the triple for him, and in 2 turns, I ended the turn with a Bone Hacker on a Tyrant, and I began the next turn with the Bone Hack on the Tyrant. I did 41 out of 42 wounds with them. The Bone Hack is the saw him up on the triple. Harpoon is the rip it out, right? Yeah. Which is another phenomenal. This is basically range chip damage. We can kite a little, and then we can kind of just collapse on you.
Sure.
You lack the anvils that you would typically have from the other lists, but having the neck slicers as like your mid-range, almost 2 of them together make 1 threat that you would be replacing. They pretty much hunt down weak and wounded things chop them up, and then kind of take control. Low wounds, low toughness here with the Clutcher-Grots, and everything else is typically toughness 3. The Grots are the only toughness 4 alongside Beast Knob and Mantrapper, but it's just the same old reaction control a little bit more fun. It feels less oppressive. There's a little bit more dice finesse involved, and the Beast Knob is just so much fun to play with that profile.
He's great. He's absolutely fantastic, especially for 200 points.
Oh,
he's way better than most other bespoke leaders. Most bespoke leaders come in at around about 200 points, right? 175 to 200 points. He's got normally 5 wounds over them. He has maybe 1 extra attack over them. Not many bespoke leaders are sitting with strength 6. They're usually at strength 4. A 3-5 damage profile is just all around solid. And then he does have that range profile, which isn't bad. 2-4-2-4. I mean, it's got the strength to do what it wants, and it does 2-4 damage, which is always seen as a good profile to have.
Yeah, he plays around a lot from mid-range to close-up, no problem. The double he has reduces your damage by hits and crits by 2 if you don't target him. So he could taunt someone. I think we did it in your game, right? Taunted Hrothgorn, and then I dipped behind a tree. And, you're rolling 2 6s, but that's way less oppressive than 4 8s.
Yes.
And you only have 2 shots, so I'll take the 4 damage over the 8 damage.
Mm-hmm.
You just mentioned the bespoke leaders.
Yeah.
Skirgan Trueblade's 205, right? Has 5-inch move, 20 wounds, 1 range, 3 dice, 6 strength, 4-6. That's cool. This guy's got all that and more for 5 points cheaper. On a double, if somebody has 5 points of damage, his damage will go up to 4-6, like the Trueblade, but with 1 more dice. So I mean, it's just flat out power creep, and it's another excellent destruction soup option. Yeah.
Yes, he is. Very, very much so. He's a very good. If you don't have the points to bring in something big, like, I don't know, one of the ogres, I think the Beast Knob is really good for the points that you're paying. He's definitely just like an all-round solid hero.
He's excellent.
And we were talking a little bit in the test game that we did about the basic Kruleboyz and about how sometimes they might not be able to kind of pull their weight in this particular warband. My view was that you might just want to almost go all in on Clutcher-Grots because they're super cheap. They can just go capture objectives and use every single one of them as just reaction batteries. You are giving up some damage by having basically no neck slicers and having it so that Hrothgorn and the Beast Knob are your only real sources of damage. But I think if you went mostly Clutcher-Grots, you might also be able to get something like a Brute Boss in there to get you messing as well, simply because Clutcher-Grots are super cheap. So maybe that's something that might be interesting to look at.
It's another Claws of Huanchi syndrome where you get 1 per box.
Yeah.
So you gotta start getting those conversions ready for the pot grot. Just make a little
pot grot, 1,000 pot grots.
Get 1,000 pot grots for like $10 because nobody wants them. Put a little green stuff, make a little jelly bean egg in there, call it a Clutcher grot. Yeah, that's cool. I think it's a really super fun idea, and I think like just the mess around and test, I think that sounds awesome. Plus, like the fact you're moving in anywhere, it's like, well, react net, you're throwing a lot of random dice on the opponent's turn. And they are 4 toughness with 6 HP. They're like little shanks again. They're not terrible, and you just kind of hide them behind stuff and make them obnoxious to get to because they're such tiny bases.
Even in a list like this, right, you could turn any one of those neck slicers into 2 Clutcher-Grots.
For sure.
Drop one of those Clutcher-Grots, gain 60 points. You're real close to Brute Boss's points by adding those points to whatever other neck slicer it is that you didn't drop.
Even if you drop like the whole Mantrapper, like we just get rid of that business. We keep the Beast Knob. You put a Brute Boss in there. You have so much extra points. We could just add the Clutcher-Grots, and then you still keep the neck slicers. So you still have some mid-range damage. You still get a whole bunch of your boys. And I think that's definitely worth investigating.
Some idea. There's some bonus monster killer tactics in there for you, for anyone who's interested for that. So that's it from me for today. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. This was a little bit different from me on my side, taking a look at specific lists that are doing well in events and trying to break them down to see why they're doing well and the different kinds of tactics that you can use in your list building. That's very interesting from my part. And if you want to see see more stuff like this, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you very much, Rob, for joining me today.
Yeah, man. Thank you. It was awesome to be on here and talk to you.
Hopefully next time, if we might see some good stuff with the monster killers, maybe we get you back on.
Absolutely. I'd absolutely love to be here for that.
Sure, yeah. But yeah, that's it. That's it from us for today. Thank you very much for watching. I've been Itan, that's been Rob, and we will see you next time.